When Jared heard the scream, it didn't echo, it collapsed. Some sounds aren't meant for ears, and some truths aren't meant for minds. Stay till the twist. Jared had never truly been alone until the deployment. He used to think he understood solitude when he took his solo hikes through Montana or locked himself in his apartment for a long weekend with whiskey and static. But the research assignment was different. They'd sent him to Station V-19, an abandoned atmospheric observatory, built deep in the Arctic Circle, retrofitted with new tech for experimental sound mapping. It was the kind of job that didn't ask many questions, just promised hazard pay and silence. That was the appeal. Silence. He arrived by snowmobile. The driver, a grizzled contractor named Frank, didn't speak much, only grunted as he dumped Jared's duffel outside the entrance. He handed Jared a small radio. "If something happens," Frank said, "don't scream." Jared blinked at him. "What? Nothing out here carries. Screams don't bounce. They go in one direction and die." Frank turned the snowmobile and vanished into the white. Station V-19 looked like a sunken bunker, mostly buried under snowdrifts. Jared entered through a creaking steel hatch and descended into a concrete corridor. Inside, everything smelled like dust and old metal. The temperature was livable, maintained by a humming geothermal unit deep below. The living quarters were tight, one bed, one desk, a small kitchenette. The lab was better. Rows of analog dials lined one wall, blinking monitors filled another. The center of the room held the massive parabolic microphone, a 20-foot dish pointed straight up through a retractable roof. His job was simple: monitor ambient atmospheric noise, test ultrasonic frequencies, and record anomalies. 3 months of this all alone. That was the agreement. The first week passed with uneventful monotony. Jared took readings every 6 hours, logged the data, made occasional check-ins with the relay station by satellite. The sky above was an endless gray smear, occasionally cracking open with shimmering auroras. That made the ice glow like neon blood. It was during the second week that the microphone began to hum. He noticed it during a routine sweep at 2 a.m. The monitor's needle flickered erratically. Jared adjusted the gain. The signal hissed, fluctuated, then steadied. A deep, low vibration came through the speakers. Not quite sound, but more like pressure against the skull. Like something humming inside his bones. He recorded the anomaly and submitted it. The relay technician responded hours later. Signal likely from geomagnetic resonance. Continue monitoring. Jared tried to forget the way his spine shivered. The next night, it happened again, but this time, it spoke. He'd fallen asleep at the console and awoke to static clicking through the speakers. His eyes focused on the screen. The needle was spiking wildly. The sound had changed. Layered frequencies, a rhythmic pulse, then, unmistakably, a voice. It was a scream. But not human. It had no throat, no lungs, no language. Yet it screamed in a way that forced Jared's body rigid. He ripped off the headphones and staggered back. His heart thudded against his ribs, and for a moment, he forgot how to breathe. After several minutes, he returned to the controls, hands trembling. The signal was gone, replaced by dead air. He checked the logs. The data had corrupted. Nothing but black waveforms where the sound had been. He considered contacting the relay, but what would he say? That the sky screamed at him. Instead, he went outside. He climbed the steel ladder to the roof, wind battering his face. He stared up. The aurora danced, swirling in slow, deliberate circles. No stars were visible. Just that green-red shimmer, writhing above the dish like veins under skin. He opened his mouth to yell, not out of fear, but defiance. But when he tried to scream, nothing came out. His throat moved, his chest convulsed, but no sound escaped. He could feel the scream leave his lungs, but the air swallowed it whole. Back inside, Jared drank until he slept. By week 3, he stopped logging entries. The voice returned nightly now. It never repeated. Each scream was unique, like someone or something learning how to form new sounds. Jared tried playing them backward, slowing them down, isolating the frequencies, but nothing made sense. The patterns weren't human, but neither were they random, and there were images now, burned into the edges of his mind. He began dreaming of the void, a vast expanse of black sky, filled with the faint outline of something massive coiled beyond perception. He floated toward it, unable to resist, mouth stretched wide, screaming without breath. He woke with blood in his throat. On the 22nd day, he smashed the microphone. It had started talking while he was awake, no longer confined to the speakers. It whispered in the vents, under the floor, inside the pipes. It used his dead brother's voice, his father's laugh, his own voice begging to be let out. He took a hammer to the dish, dented the metal, snapped the wiring, tore the console from the wall. For a moment, there was peace. The silence returned, thick and dull. Then came the knock. It was faint at first. A tap. Like fingers on glass. Jared froze. The sound came from inside the station. He followed it, step by step, down the hallway. It moved as he did, always just ahead. Not louder, just closer. He reached the main hatch. The knock stopped. There was no one outside. Just wind and snow and darkness. But when he turned back, someone had written on the wall, "Let me owe you too." Jared didn't remember picking up the marker, but it was in his hand, uncapped, ink smeared across his fingers. He backed away, heart thundering. "Who are you?" He whispered. The speakers crackled behind him. "I am you, trapped." He turned and saw the console, untouched, whole, still humming. He had destroyed it, he was certain. But there it was, pristine. He ran. He threw on every layer he could find, packed a single bag, and sprinted into the storm. He didn't care where he went, just away. But the landscape didn't change. The white stretched endlessly, each hill identical to the last. After what felt like hours, Jared stopped. The sky above pulsed and the wind died. He heard it again. Not a scream, but a laugh. Then he saw the lights of the station, exactly where he'd left them. He hadn't moved. Not really. When he re-entered, the hatch closed behind him with finality. The words on the wall had changed. You left the door open. He spent the next week boarding every vent, every hatch, every crack. He ripped apart furniture, used screws from the equipment. He stopped sleeping. The voice no longer needed devices. It lived in the air now, in his blood. He began speaking to it. "If you're me," Jared asked, "why do you want out?" It responded in a tone that sounded like smiling. "Because I remember what it's like to scream." He tore out his own tongue the next day, not to kill himself. He still needed to eat, to survive. He just didn't want to give it any more material. The pain was cleansing, honest, but the voice didn't stop. It began using other parts of him. Memories, thoughts, regrets. "You should have gone to his funeral," it said in the sound of his old therapist. "You shouldn't have touched him," it said in the voice of a child. "You screamed, didn't you, that night in the barn?" Jared rocked in the corner, eyes bloodshot, mouth stitched by silence. He tried to write, but his hand shook too much. On the 45th day, he found a second set of footprints in the snow. Barefoot, leading from the microphone dish to the hatch. Inside. Nothing had changed, except his reflection. It no longer mirrored him. The figure in the glass didn't. It just stared, smiling. Then, slowly, it raised its hand and knocked against the inside of the mirror. Once, twice. On the third knock, the mirror cracked. Jared stopped sleeping entirely. He stopped eating. He stopped being Jared. He no longer knew what that name meant. The station had. No clocks anymore. No temperature. The scream lived in him now, not as sound, but as a need. A pressure building behind his eyes, his teeth, his bones. And one day, it was quiet again, a terrible, hollow quiet. That's when Frank returned. The snowmobile sputtered outside as the hatch creaked open. Frank stepped in, muttering about the signal cutoffs, ready to chew Jared out. He didn't see anyone at first. Then he noticed the parabolic dish, repaired, gleaming, and Jared standing beneath it, smiling. Frank stopped. "You all right, kid?" Jared tilted his head. His mouth opened. No sound came out. Then he screamed, the kind of scream that didn't echo, that collapsed inward, that peeled the thoughts from your skull like bark from a tree. Frank dropped to his knees, blood streaming from his nose, ears, eyes. And then, silence. When the rescue team found Station V 19 weeks later, there were no bodies. No signs of struggle. Just a working dish, a pristine lab, and one message etched into the console. "Now you hear ITTOA." And the dish kept listening. Still does. Waiting for someone else to scream into the void. You're not losing your memory, someone else is stealing it. He can't recall who he is, but someone remembers everything about him. Stay till the twist, it started with the name. Or the lack of it. He sat up in the hospital bed, fingers trembling over the scratchy blanket, and couldn't recall who he was. No name, no face in his mind. Just the sterile smell of antiseptic and a deep, sickening void in his thoughts. The nurse who came in, cheery and indifferent, called him John Doe, and though it meant nothing to him, he nodded like it did. Doctor said it was trauma-induced amnesia. No head injury. No scars. Nothing on his fingerprints. The police couldn't find a match. No missing persons reports. No ID. He was a ghost. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part came 2 days later, when he was released into a temporary shelter, a bland center for the displaced and unclaimed. That night, in the flickering hum of the overhead fluorescent light, he stared into the cracked mirror of the shared bathroom and saw something move behind his own reflection. Not behind him, behind the mirror version of himself. The man in. The mirror blinked out of sync with him, too slow, like it was mimicking him with a second's delay. He didn't scream. He backed away and didn't go near that mirror again. They assigned him a roommate named Travis. Older, bitter, gruff. Travis never asked about his memory loss, never shared much. But he watched John, watched him closely. Too closely. "You're not new," Travis said one evening, lighting a cigarette by the open window. "I've seen you here before." John's stomach twisted. "No, that's not possible. You came last winter. You left in spring. Came again in summer. Always forget who you are. Always start over. That's not no, I would remember." Travis blew smoke, unfazed. He takes it from you, leaves you empty. "Who?" Travis didn't answer. He just stared into the corner of the room, eyes glassy and distant. John dreamed that night, a room with no windows. A man standing over him. Shadows where the man's face should be. He held something in his hand, like a string of smoke, and whispered words John couldn't hear but somehow understood. "You don't need this anymore." When he woke, the dream slipped away, but the terror stayed. He began writing things down. Every day, notes, observations, names. He filled a notebook with details about himself. Age estimate, late 30s, left-handed, possible faint accent when tired, birthmark on his ribs. Anything that might tether him to an identity, but after a week, The pages started changing. Words disappeared. Whole entries rewritten in handwriting just slightly off from his. Instead of left-handed, it now read ambidextrous. His estimated birthday had shifted by a month. In one entry, he had written, "Afraid of the dark." It now said, "Darkness is comforting." He confronted Travis. "You're messing with my notes," he accused, shoving the notebook into his face. Travis didn't even glance at it. "No one's messing with anything. That's him. He's rewriting you. Who the hell is he?" But Travis just turned away again, mumbling something about locks and forgetting and how memories don't belong to us forever. John began hearing whispers at night. Not voices exactly, but impressions like someone was remembering him out loud. In a nearby room, the sensation was nauseating. The more it happened, the more he felt something leaking from his mind. Faces he had started to remember blurred again. He forgot where he put things. Forgot conversations from hours before. He asked a counselor at the Center for Help. Dr. Langford was calm, thoughtful, with a psychologist's patience. He listened to John, took notes, nodded double quotes, "Do you believe it's possible for someone to steal a memory?" John asked him one day. Langford gave him a slow, measured look. "No, but trauma can externalize. Make it feel like something is happening to you instead of inside you. I'm telling you, someone's taking pieces of me. Not metaphorically, literally. I feel it happening." Langford suggested medication. John refused. That night, John returned to his room and found the notebook. Soaked in water. The pages smudged, ink bleeding. But not all the entries were ruined. One survived, clear as glass. "He's inside you already." John didn't remember writing that. He stayed awake the whole night, eyes fixed on the dark corner of the room, where the wall met the ceiling. There was a wrongness there, a flicker like heat waves, something shimmering just beyond sight. And from that space came a feeling like nostalgia turned rotten, a sensation of being remembered by something he couldn't see. The next day, Travis was gone. The staff said he checked out. John didn't believe them. He searched the room for signs, found Travis's pack of cigarettes still in the drawer, his boots under the bed. No one leaves without their boots. He began to lose hours. Time slipped between his fingers. One moment he'd be eating breakfast. The next he'd be standing in the park outside, 3 hours gone, hands muddy and scratched, his shirt torn. No idea what had happened. He tried to record himself. Left his phone camera running overnight, pointed at the bed. In the morning, the footage was corrupted, but a few seconds remained intact. In it, he lay perfectly still, then sat up at 3:12 a.m. and whispered directly into the camera. "He remembers me better than I do." His eyes in the footage were wrong, wider, hungrier. John left the center, wandered the city, stayed in hostels, underpasses, kept to himself. But the feeling followed. He could sense the thing getting closer, like a fisherman reeling in a line. Each day he forgot more words, street names, his reflection. One day he saw himself in a car window and didn't recognize the face. He found an old man in a shelter who claimed to know the truth. Said his name was Leon. No one else seemed to see him. "You think you're the only one?" Leon rasped. "He's taken hundreds of us. Not our lives, not our bodies, just ourselves. Bit by bit, like carving meat. Who is he?" Leon's eyes gleamed. A man who doesn't exist anymore. A man who erased himself long ago. To live, he needed memories. So he took others. Now he's a patchwork of stolen pasts. "Why me?" Leon leaned closer. "You have strong memories. Deep ones. Guilt. Regret. The tastiest kind. He's been feeding on you for years." "I've only been like this for a month," Leon chuckled. That's what you remember now. He told John there was a way to fight back. Remember something real, something so true, so painful, it couldn't be erased. Anchor yourself, he said. Make a mark he can't scrub clean. John thought hard, dug into the rotten core of his mind, and found something. A name, Caleb. A boy, 8 years old, dead in a lake, his brother. John had pulled him from the water too late, had jumped in seconds too slow. His scream still echoed in the bones of that memory. He wept, clutching that truth like a burning coal. The next morning he wrote it down, dozens of times. Carved it into his arm with a safety pin. Caleb, Caleb. He screamed it into alleyways. Whispered it in his sleep. But that night, the memory changed. In the new version, he wasn't there when Caleb drowned. He was at the store. Came home to sirens. He had no guilt. No screams. He checked his arm. The cuts still read Caleb. But now he couldn't remember why. The memory thief had taken even the pain. He ran, stumbled, broke into a storage unit he somehow knew was his. Inside were boxes of notebooks, dozens, all his handwriting, all filled with names, dates, dreams, memories, entries about memory loss, about forgetting, about Travis and Langford and Leon. He'd been through this before. He flipped through a journal from 4 years ago. An entry read, "He's erasing this again. I must remember the pattern. Always starts with the mirror." Another, "Don't trust the version of you that talks back." Another, "Your body isn't yours past midnight." John collapsed. He wasn't a victim. He was a farm, grown and harvested. Again and again. A scraping noise echoed from the far side of the unit. He turned slowly. In the shadows stood a man. Same height, same build, same face, but his eyes were steady, confident, whole. "You're the original," John whispered. "No," the man replied. "I'm the latest, the most complete. You're the backup." The shell. "That's not true." The man stepped closer. "We were both fragments once, but I've collected more. I've remembered more. A thief favors me now. You're him. I'm what's left when he finishes eating. And he's almost done with you." John screamed and charged, but the man didn't flinch. They collided, bodies writhing. But it wasn't a fight. It was a merging, a collapsing of threads. Memories blurred, twisted. John saw himself as a child, as a father, as a soldier, as a killer. Lives he never lived. Or maybe he did. He woke up on a bench outside the city. New clothes. New ID in his pocket. Name, Michael Graves, age 41. He knew everything. Memories flooded back, but they weren't his. He remembered being born in 1953 and 1987 and 2002. He remembered being tall and short, rich and poor, loved and hated. He remembered. John, a shell, a scribble. He smiled and walked into the city, hungry for more, because the real thief wasn't a man, it was memory itself, twisting, adapting, devouring those who clung to their pasts, and now it wore his face.